Testing. Test. 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 Testing. Testing. Hello. Hey. Yeah. I think we finally got this thing figured out. So that all anybody has to do is talk into mics.
Oh, okay.
Hello? Interesting. I should be able to hear myself. On these computers. Hello? 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 Testing. I just want to make sure whoever's calling in, you can hear them.
Is anybody coming down
I don't think so.
here? Rick said he might be coming down, but he didn't give me for sure.
Rick Grover?
No, Rex.
Oh,
Not
Rex.
Rick.
Okay, gotcha. Let me see if, I think just in case anyone decides to come in, let me see if maybe it's, there must be some technology that's making it so you can't hear my echo, but because shouldn't we be able to hear me talking into my laptop on these?
I would think so, and I think Scott had to do it one time, but I don't know how he did it.
All right, let's see. Can you hear me at all on the speakers in the commission chambers? Hello, testing. Can you hear me at all? Hello? Could you not hear me? Let's see. I think maybe it's select a microphone, select a speaker. Hello? Hello? Testing. Should be the opposite. You should hear it on. Hello? Hello? Can you still? Oh. Testing. Testing. Shout out to Ann. Ann, how's it going? She is. Yeah. How's it going?
Hey, how are you, Steve? I'm doing good.
Thank you. Got Rex here as well in person.
Great. You really have to wear that thing? That's better.
What we'll do is just talk to the mic, because then that's how anybody on Zoom will be able to hear. But I can probably get a cam.
Can you hear me, Laura?
I can, but
Okay.
Steve, your mic is off, so I'm not sure where that's
So, yeah, so my mic is off because I've got my laptop here just so you can see me, and I've got my laptop muted. But you can hear me okay, right? Just through the commission chambers mic.
Perfect.
Cool, awesome. I'm gonna see if we
Oh,
can
you're
get
in the
a-
commission chambers. Okay, now I can see that. Now I recognize. All right, we're good.
I am too, Laura. I decided I thought I'd try this instead of using my phone in one hand and my computer in the other. Because I don't
Is
have
this-
a mic. This is Rex.
Is this Rex?
Yes.
Oh, so you're down there?
Yep, I'm here,
Oh, I'm
Live.
jealous.
live and in person.
I'm jealous.
Well, all you had to do is drive down.
Well, I didn't know if I'd be turned away. Everyone is so paranoid.
I questioned that too. I just took my mask off because there's nobody here.
Yeah.
Steve put
So-
his on, then he took it back off.
Well, I'm glad you're there. So you're the only other board member? I don't think anybody else is even on. I don't see anybody else here.
So the
The,
agenda says 4:30, but the notices that Scott sent out actually said 5.
oh, really?
So we've got a little bit of time.
Oh,
I can't hear you.
he said that the notice went out and actually said 5 o'clock.
Oh, because our agenda says 4:30. And I think we have the applicants here.
It
Yep,
looks like.
she's smiling.
They are.
Hi. Yeah, our agenda says 4:30. So,
Well, and
As
the board,
much as
the other
I
board
love you
members
all-
should know. They
Pardon?
should know. The other board members should know as well.
that it's 4:30.
Correct.
Yeah. This isn't a public hearing, right? Steve?
No, this is not a public hearing.
Okay, so technically we start a little bit early.
We were originally told 5 o'clock and then it changed when we checked it just
Okay.
10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Gets a little weird and I don't want to say kinky. What's that other word?
Yeah.
Not kinky. It gets a little hinky. That's the word. Hinky. All this Zoom stuff.
Steve's going to turn his around so that you'll actually be able to see that I'm here.
It was Brandan, our new lawyer.
Well, if
Are
it is, he's not here yet.
Bra-
He's upstairs.
I'm in my office right now, but yeah, I'm the new lawyer.
Yeah.
Chris has sent me, he tells me there's a lot of fires to put out, so here
I told him I wasn't going to be very nice to you.
I am.
He told me, he said, I've got a new guy. He's great. I said, do I have to be nice to him? Well,
Not a
we-
requirement.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Glad to
it
be
is.
here.
We love our law. At least I do. Rely on you guys a lot. So are you new in the Ogden area or just graduated or where do you hail from?
I'm actually from the Ogden area. I was born at McKay and went to Weber High School and went to Weber State for undergrad and then left the state for my law degree. And I just graduated this last year, so I'm pretty new to the field.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Right smack in the middle of it. Well,
Yeah,
if Chris is your mentor, then, and well, Sean, you have a great office there. And
yeah,
just,
Chris has been amazing.
yeah, Chris is amazing. Chris is,
Thank
is,
you. I feel like a tyrant sometimes. Thank
oh,
you.
you're on here too. Shoot. We're
Oh.
supposed to be able to talk about you.
Oh, well, you said all nice things. I'm like getting embarrassed.
What?
No, I'm very excited to see Brandon's trainings tonight. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, he doesn't even look scared. I don't see any sweat coming down. Nothing. Yeah, he just seems to be doing good. Okay, we've got, hi, applicants, thank you for being patient with all this chatter beforehand. We're not usually this, you know what, I'll be honest with you, for the first time in almost 10 years of service on either the Planning Commission and or the Board of Adjustments, even on Zoom, this is the first time I've worn jeans. I have jeans on. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have pants on before, for the Zoom thing. I've just always worn a dress or been professional. And I think we're just all getting a little lax. What do you think, Chris? Do you think, well, no, you've got your tie on, so you're good. Don't show us anything below. We don't care. Yeah, okay,
Jeans
good.
are professional.
They are. Oh, Steve, bless your heart. Today's not even Friday though. So I don't know.
If you have like a blazer on, I think it works.
Yeah, I'm barefoot. What does that mean? Whew. It means that things need to change, huh? All right. So maybe I don't know why everyone else would think that we're supposed to be here at 5, since my agenda and everybody else that got the agenda said 4:30. So let's see if any other board members are on. Will you please unmute yourself and make yourself known? Looks like.
I'm Jeanette, I'm here.
Okay. Janet, what's your last name?
Jeanette Borkland.
Can you spell that?
Borklund.
I'm pretty sure I didn't hear that right, but somebody will know who you are. Okay. Keep going. Who else? We've got a gentleman, Samsung Galaxy 57. Are you, or S7? Are you?
Kevin Grimes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm at a project on a job, so I'm using my phone right now.
That's fine. That's great. You're board member.
Yes.
Yeah, I know we've added quite a few people. I don't know if we've met or not. Okay. What about Dan Couric? Are you a board member?
No, I'm a general contractor building for Dennis Barrett.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and mute yourself. And Dennis, I'm going to ask you to mute yourself too as well. Thank you for the time being. Okay. Anybody else on? Who is the 435 number that is muted? Do you have any other board members? Okay. So we have 3 board members here. We can go ahead and proceed, but that means that we all have to agree.
I think we have 4 board members.
We do. I am so sorry. Would you state your name for the record?
You want me to state my name, Laura?
Yes, for the record.
Rex Mumford.
Pardon?
Rex Mumford.
Right. Okay. Okay, so we have 4 board members, which means we proceed just as normal. So let's go ahead and proceed. And again, welcome everybody out. And thank you for meeting with us on Zoom today for the Board of Adjustment meeting for February the 11th, 2011. First, I'd like to ask that if you are not speaking, that you would go ahead and mute yourself. Board members, please go ahead and keep yourself unmuted and speak at will. I am not in charge of this meeting, so I cannot see if you've raised your hand or if you have anything in chat. I might be able to see if you have things in chat, but I would prefer not to chat, prefer not to take that route. So just go ahead and interrupt and we'll figure that out. But any other citizens here, including the applicant, will give you a special time to speak and you'll be able to hear everything. And be able to say everything that you need to say. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So
I apologize, Madam Chair. I believe we have to wait until 5 o'clock to start the meeting because there were some notices that were sent out. that stated the meeting would start at 5.
Okay, so we do have to do that. All right,
Yeah.
then I am going to get off for right now, and because that is 20 minutes away. So I apologize. My agenda and all the board members' agenda say it's 4:30. So
Yeah, our apologies. It does say that on the agenda. I think there's just a mix up in the notices that were sent out. So we
Okay.
apologize for that.
I am going to go ahead and just not log off, but just undo my video and my mute. I'm going to go take care of some things, and I shall be back.
Awesome.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, I can't see anybody. You've taken my screen. So you'll have to let me know if there's any hands raised or anything, okay? All right, I don't think that anybody except for Janet, Kevin, and Rex are here as board members. If there are, can you please make yourself known right now? Okay, thank you. So again, I'd like to apologize to the people that showed up at 4:30, the applicant and your people that came to help. We apologize for that misunderstanding. Thank you for your patience. So we want to ask everybody to mute themselves. And even if you're in an office, if you're not on headphones, be cognizant that the microphone on your laptop can often pick up all the background noise in your office. If you're at home or in your car, dogs matter. We love them, we just don't want to hear them. Okay, I'd like to invite everybody to say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. And I will be standing. You do what you would like. So, with me, please. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your patience. I have a hard time saying that without tearing up. Okay, we've already done roll call here. We do have enough board members to conduct business. Now we'll go ahead and approve the last minutes. The only people that were at that meeting that are here are Rex Mumford and myself. But if any of the other board members have read it and have any comments, are there any changes that you can see that you think should be made? Please speak freely. Okay, seeing none, then I will approve those. Minutes have been approved. Yes? We don't need a motion to approve, not the minutes. Did you have something you needed to say, Kevin?
Oh, no, sorry. No,
Okay. We just caught, okay. So do we have a planning? Who is in charge from the planning department?
Madam Chair, Director Grover had another appointment he had to be at, so he's asked me to fill in for him today. This is Steve Burton from the planning office.
Thanks. And you're not going to be, you're not going to be reading anything, or do you have anything that you'd like to read beforehand the meeting?
I don't have anything I'd like to read. No.
Okay.
Looks like we just have this. What's on the agenda today? Looks like there is a training, and there also is elections. If you've seen that.
We see. So, and if there's nobody here that would like to change the order or of the anything, no one want to change the order of business here. Nobody wants to do that. Y'all know that you can do that, right? Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed. Are there any conflicts of interest, any ex parte communications, or anything else that any of the board members need to declare right now? Okay, thank you. Yes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Then moving forward, we will go ahead and hear item number, we'll go to number 2, which is consideration for BOA 2021-01, consideration and action on a request for a 15-foot variance to the 50-foot natural ephemeral stream corridor setback for property located at 3488 North Elk Ridge Trail in Eden. The planner Perkes is going to be presenting that, and the applicant is Dennis Barrett. I know that we also have, I think Mr. Barrett's somebody here to speak from as well. Mr. Barrett, if you can wait until I call on you to say anything. And then because I can't see anybody, I'm a little at a disadvantage here because the screen has been taken from me. I'm just going to ask, is there anybody here from the public that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Unmute yourself and just state your name. Okay, seeing that, I'll check back in just a few minutes when we're done with the presentation. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Perkes. Let's do this.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to be here. We apologize again for the misunderstanding of the agenda time. So this application request is for the consideration and action on a request for a 20-foot variance to the 50-foot natural ephemeral stream corridor setback for a lot in the Elkhorn subdivision at approximately 3488 North Elk Ridge Trail. The project area is here under a half acre, and it is located in the RE15 zone. Just for some history on this, in July of '96 is when this subdivision was platted, and this lot has sat vacant as a developable lot until recently, where the applicant is looking to build a single-family home on the lot. For some more history, the sensitive lands ordinance that contains the setback requirements for ephemeral streams was adopted in 2005. So this subdivision predates that ordinance by 9 years. So the requirements of this ordinance came into play 9 years after this lot was designed. And it has caused an encumbrance across the rear property, whereby if this 50-foot setback were adhered to, would create quite a bit of a hindrance to the natural development of the lot as originally intended by the subdivision plat. So as a clarification, they're requesting a 20-foot variance of the setback, which means that the structure could be as close as 30 feet to the high water mark of this stream. And in the neighborhood, I'm going to switch up to the subdivision plat here. This is lot 29, which you can see here in yellow. In this subdivision, the majority of the homes are actually already built. There's only 2 lots that remain unbuilt. Many of them were built prior to the ordinance going into place. There's only 2 lots that remain unbuilt. And most of them have this encumbrance, but weren't required to adhere to the ephemeral stream setbacks, whether because they built before the ordinance went into place or because at the time the ordinance wasn't being enforced. If you can see on the plat here, you can kind of see the drainage channel here that runs kind of through the backyards of these lots. In speaking with the engineering department, this is a natural drainage, so it does run with water for the majority of the year. However, it is manipulated by various catch basins and control devices. There's actually a project on the engineering to-do list in just to the south here, whereby they intend to have another detention basin with a control device that would ensure that during high storm events that the water that is being released from those storm basins remains consistent, so that we don't anticipate the high water mark in this natural stream from varying much, if at all. As with any variance request, there's a couple of criteria points that we're required to review these projects against. There's 5 of them in the ordinance. And staff's analysis has shown that there is a unique hardship that this lot does have, in that the rest of the neighbors weren't required to adhere to. Does anybody have any questions on what's being requested based on what was presented in the staff
Chair,
report?
I have one question.
Any questions? Staff's recommendation is that it would appear that the variance requirements have been met. This is not a self-inflicted request, and the applicant is going through the appropriate channels to request a variance. Board member Borkland, did you have a question?
We did one that was kind of the same thing last fall. Is this the same property, or is it a next door? Or?
It's a different property elsewhere in the county, but the same principle applies
Okay.
here. Staff, as a matter of fact, we're actually looking at some exemption language to try and alleviate these types of requests, as it would appear that these are going to keep coming up as we enforce the ordinance, as a lot of lots of record that existed prior to the ordinance going into place are going to have this same issue.
Scott, Rex Mumford here. Just a question regarding the prior screen that you had up showed an easement for that basin. What's the width of the easement?
So the width of the easement, let me actually go to the subdivision plat. It would have some more of the dimensions here. It gives the alignment here. It doesn't call out the width, but it is not as wide as the 50 setback is. What you'll see on this image, let me go back to it here. The 50-foot setback is shown in blue with that line, and then the detention basin easement is here. So the home as proposed in their building plan stays out of the detention basin easement as required. However, the high water mark shown here, if we take 50 feet from it, shows here in blue. So it takes up quite a bit of that property's developable area.
So if we were to grant the 15-foot variance, we're not interfering with the detention basin easement as established.
That's correct. And as a clarification, the variance request is a 20-foot variance request. There was a typo on the agenda there, but the staff report does clarify it's 20 feet, and that is from this edge of the deck here to the center line. So that's the most, that's the closest that they need, and that represents a 20-foot variance. So from the corner of the home on this patio to the high water mark, there would be 30-foot separation.
So the edge of the deck would be outside of the easement.
Right on the easement itself.
Sorry, I think you cut out just a little bit there.
Rex, did you
What
hear
he's
that?
saying is that corner of the deck looks like it's right on the detention basin easement line.
Yeah, sorry, this north arrow is kind of in the way, but that's correct. So it does not encroach. The detention basin easement is not trespassed. The structure stays outside of it.
Scott, have you been to this property?
I have not, but I did engineers.
cut out
They
again.
have.
Sorry, Scott. You keep
And they did clarify this is a natural drainage easement. Yeah, it runs kind of through the backyards, then further up the hill there. So everybody in this area has been able to build as a normal lot. I guess that's the unique hardship here, is that now that we're enforcing the ordinance, the restrictions are more restrictive for him versus others who have built prior.
Okay, board members, do we have any more questions for Mr. Perkes?
I don't.
Okay. Janet?
No.
Okay, great. All right. What is his name? Does the applicant is it Mr. Dennis? Would you like to speak at all? You don't have to, but if you'd like to,
Hear
please
me?
unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say other than what Scott has mentioned. I mean, we purchased the ground 2 years ago, knowing that it was a building lot. We didn't hear anything about a 50-foot high water mark, which granted, I guess those things happen, but none of that was divulged to us. But you know, we're starting from the front, the 30-foot requirement. We just can't really build what we want to build without having the easement.
Board members, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Dennis or for Mr. Barrett?
I don't.
Mr. Barrett, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back. Now, I know this is always gets confusing, and as I was reading through our rules once again, it's a little bit confusing. As we go over our rules today, we're going to clarify some of this, but according to Robert's rules, and this is what we're based on, an amended form of Robert's rules, we need to have a motion before we discuss. So we don't have to keep that motion, but we do have to have a motion on the table, a first and a second, and then we can discuss. So chair is open for a motion. I cannot make a motion. So unless we have a motion, we cannot discuss this item. So would one of my board members please make a motion?
A motion to discuss.
Okay, that's not a proper motion.
Oh,
The motion would be either to pass, not pass, to table, to,
never mind. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so what would be your motion?
I'm withdrawing right now. Let somebody else. I just want to make sure I'm right on that.
Okay, a motion that would work right now would be either to approve or disapprove. So do we have someone that can either do one of those two motions? You have
This
other
is Re-
motions.
This is Rex.
Uh-huh.
I would make a motion that we approve BOA 2021-01 consideration and action on a request for a 20-foot variance to the 50-foot natural stream corridor setback at 3488 North Elk Ridge Trail in Eden.
Would you like to speak to that motion really quick? Why you want to approve it? Besides the fact that I asked you for a motion.
That's what I was looking for findings.
Well, yeah, that's what, just hold on a second, Janet, because if you want to second the motion, I'll ask you the same thing. But Rex, can you just give us reasoning why you're going to approve?
Yeah, I would just base it on the staff report findings and the presentation by Mr. Perkes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Janet Borkland seconds the motion. Would you like to speak to your motion? Janet?
Just based on there is a special circumstances in that the law was created before the ordinance, and it is consistent with the general plan, and it kind of there kind of is a hardship on that lot if there isn't a variance granted. So the state law regulations, I believe, are satisfied.
Great. Okay, thank you. I love having this recorded because I know that staff will be able to put those in the meetings just perfectly. In the minutes, I mean. Okay, so anybody, any other board member, does anybody have anything to say to this? Have any discussion whatsoever? I would like to support the motions because I do believe that this is a grandfathering issue, that this law was created before the new ordinance, and the new ordinance does put a burden. It seems that the request is reasonable, and so that would be my recommendation as well. Do we have any more discussion to the motion? Okay, then I'll go ahead and take a vote. What I'm going to do is do a roll call vote. If you just say yay or nay, board member Borkland, yay or nay?
Yes.
Board member Grimes.
Yay, yes.
Board member Munford.
Aye.
And chair is aye as well. So that's 4 in favor, aye. The motion passes, and that will be that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, the next is the election for a chair and vice chair for
Thank you, board members.
2021. Pardon? I would love it if somebody else did this next year, just because I have, I've been a chair and vice chair for over 6 years now in either the planning commission and then just 1 year here this last year, but it's a good experience. I sent a private message to Janet, but I don't think you got it. Are you interested in sharing?
I'm kind of new, but I guess I could.
I think you could. Then would you mind if I went ahead and nominated you to be the chair for this next year?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, you'll do great. Okay, so I move that Janet Borkland be the chair of the Board of Adjustments for the year of 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 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 aye. Anybody opposed? Great, that passes. Congratulations. I will step down now. You're in charge.
Oh dear.
I'm okay. That's okay. I'll do the rest of the meeting. I won't do that to you. I'm just kidding. We need to do a vice chair now.
Do we have a vice chair?
Pardon?
Do we have a vice chair?
Nope, that's what we're going to do right now. Do we have any
Okay.
nominations for a vice chair? I'm going to come after you if you don't volunteer. Kevin, would you be interested in doing vice chair?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great. Okay. Okay. I nominate Kevin Grimes as vice chair for 2021. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then Kevin, congratulations. You are now vice chair. And the planning staff is wonderful about training. So don't worry about a thing. Okay, rules of order. So important. Oh, excuse me, schedule for the information for the 2021 meetings. All right, should we go to that, staff? Who doesn't say who's going to do that? Who's going to do that?
I can show you here just a calendar. Let me, I'll share my screen real quick.
Yeah. And by the way, in your planning, in your staff report, you did have 20-foot setback. You did good. It was just somehow the meeting agenda got mixed up. All right. So in the staff report, there is the calendar.
So you'll notice here on whenever you see this light blue, and we only schedule these if we receive an application. So the second and fourth Thursday of every month.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for that? Okay.
And it doesn't look like we have any scheduled for November.
All right.
We'll always let you know. We'll always do what we normally do and call or email all of you to let you know when we have an item.
Since we're talking about meetings, and since having Zoom meetings is more of a public agreement than it is a law or a rule or anything else, which we'll talk about in the rules of order too. But do we know how long that they expect us to do this, or how this is going to work? I don't mind meeting from home, but I sure miss seeing people face to face. I mean, sometimes it's really easy, but do we have any word on that?
So the only thing is here at the commission chambers, the seating is fairly close for the board members who would be sitting up on the stand here.
Okay.
I believe at the planning commission level, we've talked about it and really just discussed what the hope is for each specific board. If you'd like to talk about that amongst, maybe that needs to be I don't know if that needs to be, part of an agenda where you talk about that. But if the board would like to meet in person, I'm happy to talk about that with Director Grover and see his thoughts on that.
Well, so what you're saying, what I'm hearing then is that the 6-foot distance between each other is what the worries are in the chairs and the commission. You'd end up having, most of the time, there's only 3 or 4 of us anyway, but if we all showed up, then we'd be in trouble.
Right. That might get kind of tricky if all members showed up. We'd have to space apart. And that could happen. I think if the board really wanted to meet in person, there may be a way to do that. We would continue to do both in person and Zoom, but if board member Mumford is here in person, and so we wouldn't stop him from being here in person, just like we wouldn't stop any of the other members. But we're currently doing both, and I believe that there are some members that would prefer to Zoom in still as well.
The Zoom part is nice. It's just depressing sometimes not to be able to, just to get me back to normal. Probably never be back to normal. Okay. Okay. So then who wants to go over the rules of order? Who's in charge of that?
That is a good question.
Where's Mr. Crockett? Or, or the
Mr.
new,
Crockett is a bystander.
okay, sorry, Mr. Quinney.
That's all right. I'm happy to go over the rules of order with the board if that is what you choose to do. This is something that the board, well, Rick Grover has asked to bring these changes to the board with them tracked so that it can be a discussion that everyone is involved with. So I'm happy to facilitate it, or you can as well, Laura, or Chair, sorry.
It's okay.
You just let me know, and I'm here to serve.
Okay.
So, Laura?
You know, what might be good is that, I mean, I have a lot of questions and points of, and it might just be better if I just call you on the phone and go over them. Because I have quite a few that some things just don't make sense or not adding up. I mean, I think that these are for the Planning Commission as well, correct? Because we don't have legislative items, or we are legislative. We don't have administrative. We have administrative items. We don't do legislative items like the planning department did. So on page 4, we don't have that. That's a little off. We don't
Correct.
do, right?
And at this time, these changes are open for discussion. It doesn't have to be approved as is. It's really up to the board to decide if you would like to table this for a future agenda, or if you'd like to discuss it now and go over provisions. I'll leave that to your discretion.
I personally think it would be really difficult to do this online as a Zoom group. Maybe if we were on Slack or something like that, where we could share the information a little bit easier, but we're not. How does everybody else feel about that? I mean, I would almost rather table this and call you and go over it line by line, even though it's not numbered. I love my documents numbered, so that we can refer to them easier. It's one of my pet peeves. So, but I'd rather do that and table this and bring this back at the next meeting. Is there any other? Yeah.
Laura, this
Mhm.
is Rex. I'd like to make a motion that we do table this until we can meet in person because of the same reasons that you're struggling with. And although you want to call Mr. Quinney to discuss things, I think we all have things on this that need to be discussed as a group.
Good. Okay. I appreciate that.
So I would make that motion to table it.
Well, and I'm not sure tabling it until, okay, hold on. I apologize. So we have a motion to table until we can meet in person. That would require a special meeting and a board meeting, almost a work meeting, which we've never done before. Is that a possibility? Planning staff?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Okay, I'm a stickler for rules. I think rules are really important. And hint, he who knows the rules wins. I learned that a long time ago, which I don't necessarily am interested in winning, but I just think it keeps order and it'll keep the county out of trouble long term. So we need to, so there's a motion on the table to table this item until we can meet in person. Do we have a time certain on that? Can we get that? Can we say within the next week, planning staff will come up with a couple of times and send them out for board members to see if that'll work? Because we can meet in the boardroom. We don't have to meet. It doesn't. It can be an open.
If I may interject, Chair.
Yes.
This is Brandon. As far as what's required by state law and the Open and Public Meetings Act, you're not required necessarily to schedule this meeting now. The only thing that you're really required to do at minimum is just to provide that 24-hour notice of the work session. So if it takes a little time to coordinate and come up with an agreeable time to do this work session, it will be an open meeting and you just have to provide the public 24-hour notice as well as the board.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. And that's true. I just don't want to leave the meeting and going, well, maybe someday we'll get together and maybe someday we'll do it. So I can second the motion, but I would like to add a friendly amendment in that it is scheduled, not that we discuss when it will be scheduled within the month, not that it will be scheduled within the month. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Then we may schedule it for 2 months out, but within the next month, we will have a date for which one we'll go and discuss it.
And as staff, we're happy to facilitate that and find out what time works best for the board members.
Okay, would that, as a friendly amendment, Rex, would that be acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. So I've never seconded a motion as a chair. I never knew I could do that until I read the rule. I didn't think I could. So, so the motion is that within this next month, we will table it when within the next month, staff will reach out and attempt to make some kind of arrangement so we can do a work meeting for this item. And I second that. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, I rule that passes anonymously, unanimously. Great, thank you. Okay, thank you, staff, for your help with that. Okay, Mr. Quinney, would you like to review the Open Meetings Act for us, please?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
I'm guessing I'm able to share my screen here. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint to help me along with this, and let's hope it pulls up correctly.
Yep, it worked.
You can see it?
Yep.
Okay. And then during this training, if anybody has any questions or wants to interrupt me, it won't hurt my feelings. I'm happy to stop and explain anything further. I'm just going to try and provide an overview, at least what is required by state law for you to know. And then you can always come to me if you have any additional questions. So this is the training on the Open and Public Meetings Act. Again, I'm Brandan Quinney. I'm one of the civil attorneys here at Weber County. Since this is a required training, I'm going to try and make it bearable. I mean, you could go as deep as you want into this kind of act, but we'll try and keep it at least interesting, somewhat interesting. All right, first let's go through a couple definitions. When we're talking about the Open and Public Meetings Act, there's a few words in here that they use that are critical to know just throughout this year. Convening means that it's really the calling together of a public body. And the public body includes the Board of Adjustment. And this is a calling together of a public body by a person authorized to do so for the express purpose of discussing or acting upon a subject over which that public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. Today we have convened, or the board has convened as a public body. Meeting, as it's used in this act, means the convening of a public body or a specified body with a quorum present, including a workshop or an executive session, whether in person or by means of electronic communications like we're doing today, for the purpose of discussing, receiving comments from the public about, or acting upon a matter over which the public body or specified body has jurisdiction or advisory power. Today's regular meeting constitutes a meeting for purposes of the act. The work session that we plan to hold to discuss the rules of order, that would also constitute a meeting as well for the act. Meeting does not include a chance gathering or social gathering. So if you pass a board member on the street or at the swimming pool or at a basketball game, that doesn't count as a meeting. You're not required to make it open to the public. A meeting though, like that, can turn into a meeting that requires public notice depending on how you talk about matters. So if you're planning on taking an action as the board, then that's typically a red flag that you need to make this public and available to anybody who would want to attend. And of course, a quorum, yes.
Can I give an example of some of the inappropriate things that can happen? Like there is a group of people that live up here in the valley and they take planning very seriously. And they have meetings and they invite people to join those meetings. And sometimes board members or planning commission members or several board, whether it be commissioners, whatever, will go there. And when they start talking, and when, especially if it becomes a majority, whatever that number is, and if they start talking about an item or an issue, a legislative item, or even worse, an administrative item, and they decide they're going to do something at a meeting in public, that's ex parte, that's off the table, that is breaking the public trust, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And really this definition kind of covers that type of scenario. I mean, if you're planning to not just act, but here it says that discussing a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction, can turn this encounter, even if it's a chance encounter at the grocery store, into a public meeting. And so you have to be really careful which hat you're wearing when you run into other board members. And if you want to do business, the safe practice is to wait until it can be put on an agenda for a meeting.
And also to be a meeting, it also has to have a quorum present, right?
That's correct. You can't actually convene without a quorum. But really what the requirement to have a quorum is a prerequisite to being able to act in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
If you're speaking as two board members, then you're really not a quorum, and that's where you don't actually have the authority in the first place to speak on behalf of the board.
However, ex parte communication means that, and especially on the Board of Adjustment where we act differently, we have to be so careful. So even talking just to one other person, like Jan, if you and I got together, we knew an item was coming up and we discussed that, or we discussed it with like an applicant came and said, I mean, I've had situations where in my neighborhood, there's been great distress over items that are up. And I've had to literally walk away from people. Like we'll walk in the morning sometimes as a group. And I'm like, I cannot discuss this. Please stop talking. And they won't stop talking. And I'm like, no, really, seriously, you've got to stop talking to me about this. And they won't stop talking. And I have to literally walk away. Because everybody else, when they come to a public meeting and there's going to be other people there, they're assuming, all the people that are there are assuming that I am completely 100% unbiased. And if I've had a conversation with somebody that makes me biased, and that becomes ex parte communication. So we have to be really, really careful.
One of our commissioners met with, well, she had somebody ask her to discuss something, and she says, I'll be happy to talk to you about it, but that means I can't vote on it in the meeting. So if you want me to vote on it in the meeting, please don't talk to me.
They've actually said that to you?
No, they've said that to a public person to say,
you know what, good for them, because that's really how it's supposed to be done. It's usually not done that way. And I've got great respect for our commissioners, but unless it's legislative, that's a little bit different.
mm-hmm.
If it's a legislative issue, then that's a little bit different. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, thank you for your comments.
Brandon?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question along that line that was just discussed. If we have an agenda in front of us, we have a question, is there any problem with us contacting the presenter? So like, for example, Scott Perkes did this presentation tonight. Is there a problem with the board member contacting him and just getting a clarification on something?
Not at all.
Correct. There's not a problem with that. There's a distinction between administrative type functions and then acting in the capacity of the board as well. And that's something that's more administrative. Procedural questions, things like that are okay to discuss.
Well, and that's one thing you can also direct the public, just say you really need to contact the planning staff with your questions. I can answer them.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, so this can become quite a muddy issue, whether something is considered a meeting that has to be open to the public with the proper notice requirements. If there's ever any doubt, it's really just a safe practice to not engage in it. I mean, if you're not for sure, it's always best to take the safe route. And of course, we're always available to help you clarify if you want to be certain. So within business hours, of course. We take our weekends. This might also help to kind of guide you as you try to distinguish whether a gathering or your discussions constitute a meeting that's subject to this act. The purpose behind this act really is to provide transparency to the public. I mean, the state legislators found that political subdivisions, which includes the Board of Adjustment, exists solely to conduct the people's business. We're dealing with rights of others that could impact communities as well. And because we are dealing in those rights, it's very important that the public has a say and is invited to the table, and that we're transparent with all of our discussions. And so, discussing the rights of somebody else and trying to make a decision without the public being present is really a red flag. So it's the intent with this act to require political subdivisions, such as the Board of Adjustment, to take actions openly and to conduct their deliberations openly. A couple other benefits, really, that, I'm sorry, should I call you Chair Warburton? You've taken off the ground today.
Say, hey, you gray-haired woman.
Go ahead, Laura.
So you're going to talk about the difference between a public meeting and a public hearing?
I certainly can.
I didn't know if it was in your agenda here.
It wasn't specifically in this training. A public hearing actually triggers a different act. It's as far as I could see, it's not covered in the Open and Public Meetings Act. But Chris Crockett might be able to correct me there. From what I know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in. So a public hearing is when, by code, you're required to take comment. You see that a lot during legislative actions where you're passing a new ordinance by law. We're supposed to take public comment. A number of land use actions require public comment. If it's a public meeting, the decision to take public comment really rests within the discretion of the board to make that determination. But if it is a public hearing, it's going to have to be noticed differently. And there's your specific rules about, you may have to publish it in a newspaper. It's going to be more than 24 hours, but you do have to give the public an opportunity to speak on the matter being presented.
So the public, I just want to say this to the new chair and vice chair, the public gets really confused about that. And the public in general often feels very defensive when they come right off the bat, regardless of what's happening. They are already almost assume they're going to be lied to and something sneaky is happening. And so I've really gone back and forth on this, and it's very different with the Board of Adjustments than it was in the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission can get you really have to control you have time limits on people and so forth. But in the Board of Adjustments, I've noticed, even though it's not a public hearing, I've just always given people the opportunity to speak if they'd like to. But I also explain to them, if they do, that we're not required to follow their advice. We can take it in, we appreciate it, but we're not obligated to do what they want us to do. And it just seems to help people feel better about life in general and where they live. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Chris and Laura, for your help on those comments. I actually have a question for both of you, since you are more of an expert than I am in some of these cases. Do you ever see an opportunity where the Board of Adjustments would have to have a public hearing?
We don't do legislative work. So Chris?
Not specifically in ordinance, but you have, when you're dealing with quasi judicial matters, you have to be mindful of people's due process rights. So that would allow an applicant, if they're appealing a land use decision, to speak to that. And then I would say anyone who can demonstrate that they have a property right or an interest in it, it might be worthwhile to allow them to speak. So no set rules for public hearings for a Board of Adjustment, but there might be due process considerations just to keep in the back of your mind.
That's what I kind of always thought, and that was better just to let them be on record. And so that if anything ever did go further, then you would have that record to adjudicate from. Okay. Thank you. Great question.
So as I understand it, nothing really that we can think of that would necessarily trigger a public hearing where any member of the public can come and, well, it has the right to come and comment, but we do have to take into account certain individuals that may be affected by our decisions and then allow them to make their comments and to be heard just for due process purposes. And the reason why I make that distinction is notice requirements change if it has to be categorized as a public hearing. And so if we don't foresee a situation where it would have to be a public hearing, then we would just follow the notice requirements that I'd be presenting today.
Would those notices also be determined by just code? Like sometimes if it's a certain something, but I don't know that we hear those items. So like in planning, when we have something that's like everybody within 500 feet has to be notified. I've never seen that happen in this board, in this body.
I'm just looking at some of I think I've got the chat here.
So we do send out notices for example, tonight we were required to send out a notice.
To everybody within 500 feet of the property?
I don't know if it specifically states within 500 feet. Let me.
But we
Brandon
don't, but that
him.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's I mean, we're notifying so people can come
Right.
talk. So really that's a public hearing.
It's a notification as a courtesy, more to let people know that something is going on.
Notification of a public meeting.
Right, notification of a public meeting.
Right. But if you're going to notify somebody, it just seems like that's a little glitch in the law.
And I can let either Brandon or Chris speak to that, but we do, it does talk about, let me see here. An appeal or a variance, we do send notice to property owners within 500 feet of the parcel on which the request has been made.
Okay. So this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that from a legal standpoint, that if there's people who have interest in it, who may have a grievance, who may have something that due process, it would be wise to allow people to speak. I am looking at it more from a community member stance where people just, the more voices, the better. And it's just my job as a chair to keep those comments germane and help teach the public at the same time what their comments can do and their influence can be and how to best have influence. So that's kind of always, so am I hearing that right? We've got two different sides here. One's legal that you're addressing, Brandon, and then there's mine, which is the emotional side.
Well, when it comes, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
So I was just going to jump in. I think that's a great point in that legally it's not required. And under the statutes and ordinances, we would look to see if it uses actually the term hearing to determine whether public comment is required. However, allowing public comment can just, it allows people to express an opinion or have their say. And a lot of the issues can be resolved right then and there very quickly during the meeting. But you also bring up a good point that when you say to keep them germane, keep them in check, because once you allow public comment and it's something that the public's really not allowed to weigh in on, you have to be careful as far as public clamor. You can't allow opinion to guide your decisions. It has to be based on substantial evidence that's in the record. So it's kind of a delicate balance, but it can be done.
That's something that took me a long time to understand, that it was, I could let my kids tell me that they really think that they should go out at night and do this, that, and the other. And that's public clamor. I, as the adult, get to make the decision based on the rules that I've already set up. So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I've been accused of being condescending. And so that kind of sounds very condescending, but it's pretty accurate, it's important that people have a voice, but it's important for us to understand what we base our decisions on. It's not always their voice and their opinions. Yep. Thank
The
you.
important part of this act is that the public it's just notice, that the public is noticed that the meeting exists. How the public is received, how their comments are received, how they're allowed to address the board, those are all procedural decisions that the board can establish through the rules of order. And so you're right on the nose, Laura, with these concerns, because that's within the board members' authority to consider how to conduct an effective meeting. But really what's required is just to provide notice to the whole public. And then whoever speaks at the meeting, that's where we start to get into procedural and due process concerns.
Yeah, the thing that's important when they do come in is to acknowledge that even though you might not be able to do what they want, they're not being ignored.
Right.
Right.
When I very, very first started 10 years ago or so ago, I remember driving home, calling a commissioner, not calling one of the county commissioners that was my friend at the time, and bawling on the phone and saying, our chair was so mean and so rude and so awful to me and so many people in the community. I was appalled. And I swore I would never, and he didn't get reelected. I swore I would never, ever, ever allow that to happen in a meeting again. And so you're exactly right. But so the planning staff, it's their responsibility to notice. It's the chair's responsibility or the vice chair to
Connect.
the meeting.
Yeah, and for the rest of this presentation, it's good to keep in mind that the Open and Public Meetings Act is really a floor. It's a minimum requirement. And so as a board, if you see anything in here that you'd like to make more restrictive or to add to, as long as it doesn't conflict with the minimums of this act, you're well within your authority. For instance, later I'll talk about timing of notices. 24 hours is the minimum. But the board can establish a procedure where 7 days is required, or a month. That's where it comes to be your discretion based on your experience and expertise with the public in the past. And these type of experiences where you don't want certain things to happen again. As long as you're meeting the minimums of the act, then you're good to make these decisions. So I'm just going to briefly go through what some of these minimums are, and then please feel free to add additional comments as we go. I've really appreciated the input, because I was afraid that I'd be talking on my own and it'd be like birds chirping. Just a quick note that because it's so important to remain transparent to the public, the courts are going to interpret these minimum qualifications broadly. It means there's going to be a presumption by a judge that whatever was discussed or acted upon is open to the public, and it becomes our burden to establish whether there was an exception to that, for instance, with a closed meeting or a chance discussion. So always assume that when you're wearing that Board of Adjustment hat, it's going to be open, and then it would be on us to establish the exceptions, which we'll go through. Here are some of the notice requirements that are minimum. We have to give at least 24 hours notice before each meeting, including this upcoming work session. The information that you have to provide on that notice is the agenda with all the agenda items that will be discussed, the date, the time, and the place. Place includes for electronic meetings, the Zoom link, which we've provided for this meeting. Adequate notice is, I guess we've met adequate notice when we've posted it at the principal office of the public body or specified body, which would be the Weber Center, if I'm correct, and the Utah Public Notice website, and then notice to at least one newspaper of general circulation within the geographic jurisdiction of the public body. And I know that newspapers are kind of starting to, I guess, phase out, and electronic communication is becoming more effective. So there is this additional requirement that it could be a local media correspondent. And that requirement can be met if we have a local media correspondent that subscribes to notices of the Board of Adjustment on the Utah Public Notice website. I haven't really looked into yet how a local media correspondent can subscribe to updates, but I know that they can get specific updates about the Board of Adjustment. And as long as they are doing that, then we have met that third point and don't have to post to a newspaper of general circulation. The only exception to this kind of notice is for an emergency meeting. Obviously, disasters could happen. We have to convene within a day. If that happens, which it probably won't, but if it does, then the board must attempt to give notice as best as possible to the public of the time and place and topics. And then we have to attempt to notify all the members of the board. And then at the end, a majority of the board members have to approve that the meeting will occur. So that's in the case of emergency meetings. Like I said, if anything like that does come up, you can always consult legal and we'll help you meet your notice requirements. But really, the standard is to do your best, or at least do what's as practicable as possible to provide notice to the board members and the public. And then you've met that requirement. As far as the agenda goes, there's often some questions on how specific we have to be when we list items on the agenda. A public notice that is required to include an agenda shall provide reasonable specificity to notify the public as to the topics to be considered at the meeting. Each topic shall be listed under an agenda item in the meeting agenda. And our agenda today was exactly that. Reasonable specificity, that can be interpreted in many ways by the average person, but just think of what the average citizen, not a board member, but what the average citizen could interpret the notice, as long as they could interpret the notice, and then they would know the essential questions as to who, what, where, when, and why. So at times, the public might bring up a topic that's not on the agenda. If you do allow public comments, someone brings up a very relevant and important topic and you realize this is not on the agenda, we haven't provided notice, then at the discretion of the presiding member, which would be the chair, a topic raised by the public may be discussed in the open meeting, even if it was not included in the agenda. However, the body cannot take final action on the topic. So you can't vote or make a motion to approve of anything on that topic unless it is properly noticed. So what you would do, you could discuss it and then you would I guess you could make a motion to put it onto the next agenda item so that the public can then know that you'll be addressing it in the future. Of course, there's that exception for emergency meetings. If some kind of emergency situation were to come up, You just provide as best as practicable. Practicable. That word is so hard to say. It's used so much in the legal world, practicable, but I'd never used it before law school. It really just means practical. I should just say that. All right, another requirement under this act is to take written minutes and also to record the meeting. So all open meetings must be recorded and written minutes must be kept. The minutes have to include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of the members present and absent, the substance of all matters proposed, discussed, or decided, a record by individual member of each vote taken. So that doesn't just mean how many votes were taken, it means who voted and who didn't. The name of each person who is not a member of the public body, and after being recognized by the chair, provided testimony or comments to the public body. The substance of the testimony or comments provided by the public, and then of course any other information that is a record of the proceedings that any member requests to be entered in the minutes. So this PowerPoint, any board member can request to put this on the record for the minutes, and we can make it part of the minutes if you would like. That would be at your discretion. Minutes must be made available to the public within 30 days after holding the meeting, and then within 3 days after the minutes are approved on your next meeting. The minutes and any public materials must be distributed at the open meeting. Sorry, I'm trying to read the slide. I should just talk naturally. They have to be made available to the public after 3 days of being approved. Same with the audio recordings. The audio recording after the public meeting must be made available to the public after 3 days of the meeting itself. This is where we can get into a little bit of trouble if we're not careful. So we'll be kind of spending the rest of this training on closed meetings and potential consequences if we were to violate this portion of the code. A closed meeting is really it's without the public being able to know what we say or do. And so the legislator is concerned that we might try and push things into closed meeting because we're afraid, that we don't want the public reaction on certain decisions, but really the public has a right to hear it. And so we just have to be careful what we make closed and what we can make opened. A closed meeting may be held if a quorum is present, 2/3 of the members of the public body at the opening meeting vote to approve closing the meeting. So just a fun little math lesson here. 2/3 does not mean 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 is actually 60%. So if we want to make a closed meeting and 5 members are present, we would have to have 4 votes of the board to approve the closed meeting. It has to be over 66%.
I have
Yes,
a
Laura?
question. I don't remember why we had a closed meeting in the Board of Adjustment, but we had a closed meeting, one of the very first meetings I was a part of. Am I remembering that correctly? And why did we have a closed meeting?
The city does the Board of Adjustment, and I do their minutes. They do, when it's an appeal to an administrative decision, not a variance, but it's an appeal to an administrative decision, they could adjourn into a closed meeting and discuss it, and then the legal staff would write their findings and send it to the applicant.
Yep, and that's just what happened, Laura. There was an appeal. That's why that happened.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I remember, oh, this is so
And
weird.
it's-
And we took
yeah,
our
and-
lawyers and we went in the back room and we talked, and then we came back out and told everybody what we decided.
That's correct. And that's one scenario. And I think that's covered on this next slide, or not. If it's not, I'll bring it up. But that is a scenario where a closed meeting is allowed. It depends on what role you are fulfilling. If
And
it's
it's because
an
the board of the
adjudicating,
quasi judicial group that they are able to do that.
that's correct. Yep. The information gathering portion of the deliberations, when you're gathering evidence and the public is providing comments, that has to be open. But when you need to retreat to discuss your decision, then the courts have allowed a closed meeting for those deliberations when you're acting in a quasi-judicial manner. And that's to allow you to be able to come up with a calm solution in a contained environment without public distraction. But you cannot make the decision or pass the decision during those deliberations. You would then close that closed meeting, reopen the meeting, and then announce the decision and make your action then.
But
It just
we did-
allows you to go back and to discuss privately without the distraction.
But when we came back out, did we come back out and have that, was that meeting still an open, was it still a hearing? Was it still open to the public? Were we taking
I
comments
believe
after that?
you need to reopen it again because you adjourn it to a closed session and then you need to reopen it again.
Yeah, I just can't remember what we did.
I think that specific meeting, if I remember right, it was adjourned, and then everybody. I don't think you opened anything back up. I think you made your decision, and everybody went home. And then there was a written decision for my. That's how I remember it.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I missed. I had to take a phone call, but are we asking questions about the last time we went into closed session for this?
Yeah, and I think Bryce Roller was the chair at the time.
Yeah.
And then-
So what happened in that is that we did close the meeting to deliberate, and then the board made a determination as to the direction that they wanted to go and instructed me to write an opinion. And then we circulated the opinion to the board to make sure it accurately reflected the direction that I was given. And then they signed the order that went out. So we actually didn't reconvene in an open meeting. You can
Right.
reconvene and announce your decision, but this one they actually wanted to have a written opinion sent out.
Okay. That sounds about right. My horses are yelling at me. They're hungry. They're going to have to wait. Try not to notice. Don't look at the horses. Go ahead.
They're not distracting at all.
No, not at all. Sorry. They're looking at me through the window, just sitting there staring at me. Feed me.
That's
All right.
funny.
Oh, it is funny. Go ahead.
So before closing a meeting, the public body has to announce that and enter minutes of the record the following information. So you have to state the reasons for closing the meeting. And after this slide, I'll show you some reasons that you can close a meeting for. The location where the closed meeting will be held, and then the vote by name of each member of the public body, which again has to be 4 out of the 5, or if there are only 3 voting members, then it would be 2 out of the 3. If there were 4, it'd be 3 out of the 4. So when may a meeting be closed? There's actually a few other circumstances that allow a meeting to be closed, but they don't necessarily apply to the Board of Adjustment. But I will bring up the ones that could apply or that you might just want to know anyway. To discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. Obviously, their reputation is on the line, so we want to protect that. A strategy session to discuss collective bargaining. That really has to do with employment. Unless the board is planning on employing anybody, it probably won't apply. Strategy sessions to discuss pending or reasonably eminent litigation. Again, that's, if we're being possibly sued over anything, you're going to want to deliberate with the lawyers in the back and, not have the public looking at our strategy for litigation purposes. That's protected information. Strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or sale of real property. As far as I know, the Board of Adjustment does not have the power to lease, exchange, purchase, or sell real property. And so I don't know if this will apply, but if it does, this can be a closed meeting criteria. If public discussion would disclose the appraisal or estimated value of the property or prevent the board from completing the transaction in the best possible terms. And then of course, this is the one where we've talked about quasi-judicial decisions. And that's just really to allow the board to have that time of undisturbed deliberation when they're deciding on the rights of a person. There does have to be a record of the closed meeting. It has to be recorded, and there have to be written minutes. The recording and any minutes shall include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of all members present and absent, the names of all others present, except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary for the purpose of the closed meeting. I really can't think of a scenario where that would happen, but if it comes up, I imagine it'll be like, wow, in this case, we don't want to disclose that this person is present. And then, of course, a sworn statement affirming the purpose of the meeting. This is where the chair, before the meeting, would sign an affidavit affirming why the meeting was closed. Chris talked to me earlier, actually, and I might have you chime in here. When is that affidavit required and when is it not? Are you able to help me out with that one, Chris?
Sure. So the only time that the affidavit is required under the statute is if you close the meeting to talk about the character or competence of an individual, which I really don't see the Board of Adjustment ever doing. I guess if you're looking at an appointment to fill a position on the board, there might be a provision that would allow you to do that. But that provision, and then also like the deployment of security personnel, which wouldn't be applicable here, allows you to bypass the recording requirement and just sign an affidavit saying that this is what we talked about.
So not often will it apply where we have to do this affidavit, but we would hope that there would be a legal person on staff that would be ready to say, wait, we need to do a sworn affidavit here.
So what that's saying is you do have to have a recording, but you do not have to have written minutes.
You do have to have written minutes of that meeting. And the reason why is if it does ever come out for public scrutiny or for the judge to have to review, then go ahead,
I was going to
Chris.
say, I think it might be may keep written minutes, but you shall have a recording. We can check the statute.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That is a may. I was reading it incorrectly. I would guess it would be good practice to keep the written minutes. Again, they're confidential minutes. But if it ever comes down to litigation, we always got to think worst case scenario. It would be good to have a record of what was discussed. I mean, we do have the recording, but the minutes might help supplement
But
that.
yeah, they probably wouldn't need to be as detailed as a meeting minutes.
And correct. That's again under the discretion of the board. Since it says may, it really doesn't impose any particular requirement of the written minutes. I'm sorry, I misread that. Thank you for clarifying. All right, so if we are found to close a meeting without the proper justifications, first of all, the act that if we were to act upon anything during this closed meeting can be voidable by a court. And then a suit to void an action against this must be brought within a certain amount of time. So there's a little bit of protection for us there, kind of like a statute of limitations. That's for the plaintiff to worry about. But within that 90 days, we are liable to suit if we didn't close the meeting properly, or if we closed the meeting and didn't have the justification for it. In addition to having it voidable by the court, we might be responsible for attorney's fees and court costs, which is just another expense to the county of public funds. In these types of cases, when someone challenges a closed meeting, the court does review it in camera to decide the legality of the closed meeting, which just means that the court reviews it privately. So the court, of course, will presume that this, just because the plaintiff says that it's not supposed to be a closed meeting doesn't mean that it is an open meeting. So they will review it privately and then decide whether it should have been open to the public.
And Brandon, if you don't mind, if I just add a little bit of trivia, and I'll get the case for the board later, but
Okay.
I've seen so many entities think that once you talk about something in a closed meeting that it's never going to see the light of day again. That's just not the case. A court could order that everything be disclosed. And so you have to be really mindful when you go into a closed meeting just to stay on topic, not only because of the criminal penalties, but also it's just that everything you talk about could come out. And the reason I bring that up is because there's actually in the last couple of years, I'll find it, but a United States Supreme Court case was actually on this topic and they ordered disclosure of everything. And so it wasn't just the community where that board was meeting, it was the entire nation that heard it. So yeah, it's something to just always keep in mind. And I think Brandan mentioned this, the closed meeting provision is, there is a criminal penalty attached to that. That's the only criminal penalty in the Open Meetings Act. So it is, it's always something to just be vigilant about.
And that criminal penalty, it of course has this mental requirement. It's called mens rea of knowingly or intentionally violating the closed meeting provision. So, you know, if you do it negligently, you know, you could be protected from these criminal violations. But if you know that this should be open to the public and then intentionally close it anyway, then that's where it can get really serious. You know, those side comments that could be made of, you know, oh, let's just talk about it now, it doesn't matter. You know, that's, and then if legal says, no, it does matter, we need to open this up. That's knowingly and intentionally violating the closed meeting. So that can get pretty serious, and really it's not something to be taken lightly. And it all revolves around the whole purpose of this act, which is we should be conducting our deliberations openly. The public should be able to see what we're doing. We're affecting their rights. We're affecting the rights of individuals and those around them. And so why not do it with them in full view? It does create a lot of burden on us and it takes away a little bit of convenience, but we are willing to sacrifice that because we're public servants in the end.
Well, and with this board, I've actually never witnessed an open meetings violation. In fact, I was going to comment on something that happened today where there was the agenda had 5 o'clock, but we were all here at 4:30. Well, it's important enough to, and I appreciate everyone being so patient to wait until 5 o'clock. That's just because it's that important to make sure that the public has the ability to listen in on matters that we're discussing. So I thought that was an absolutely fantastic example of following the open and public meetings law.
And I would have done it at 4:30, just as a matter of, well, we're all here, let's get going. And so I thought it was a great thing that Steve said. I think it was Steve, wasn't it you, Steve, that said, Laura, we need to wait. Yeah. And so backing each other up, I think, is really important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And so I was like, sure, I'll go do my dishes. Let me go do something. I'll come back.
Yeah, so really the main requirements of this act, if we were to just kind of wrap it up into a couple solid points, is to first provide notice to the public. The public deserves to know, and that 24-hour minimum is important. And then, of course, the contents of that notice, how that notice goes out, and the agenda satisfies those requirements. And as I see the agenda now, at least the one that was posted for this meeting, it satisfies those type of notice requirements. And that just needs to be out to the public within the 24-hour time frame. The second one is the minutes and recording, to keep a good record of these meetings and then to provide that record to the public. And then when we approve them in the future, the board would have had a chance to review it and make sure that it's accurate. And the third one, of course, are those closed meetings. Really, everything should be open, but there's only exceptions to that. So under limited circumstances, would we allow a meeting to be closed? And those were listed in this PowerPoint, but also you can find them. If you want to write it down. Section 52, or Title 52, Chapter 4, Section 205. So 52, Chapter 4, Section 205. Those will list the times when a meeting may be closed. So if you're ever convening as a board and you're just wondering, is this a time where we should close? Take a look at that section, go through the checklist. If you can find justification under any of those, then you're good to go. Any questions for me? All right.
Good job.
I will close my time for the training and give it back to the board.
I apologize. I got sidetracked. I've got a daughter-in-law that's going to have a baby in a second. She just tried to contact me. So I'm not sure I need to go, but
I think we're
thank
pretty well
you.
finished, are we not?
Are we? Then can I have a motion to adjourn?
I mean, we adjourn.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And you did great, Brandon. You can stay. Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. See you.